I've heard a lot about the juiced expedition strategy recently, and I kind of wanted to take some time to test it out on my own and see if the stuff I'd heard, that it's good, that it's incredibly hard, but that it's very profitable, just kind of wanted to test all of that out, see how I felt about it. Hi, it's Lerald, and in this video I'm going to be talking about Juiced Expedition. That's expedition using the Scarab of Archaeology that gives all of the remnants in the area 2 additional suffixes and prefixes. But first, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, so let's just go ahead and get right into things, and we'll start out by talking about kind of the profits that I've made, what I've made out of this. Most of it has been a mixture of exotic coinage and burial medallions, a little bit of raw currency. I think I only had one Gwynnin show up, and I realized after I'd left the map that I was filtering out Astragali, so I went and changed my loot filter so that I wouldn't do that again. And then I never saw her again. I did 25 maps. I saw one Gwynnin. I think I saw 3 Rogs, and then all the rest were Danig and Tujen. So as you can see, also, like, this really isn't a great map farming strategy. I only got a couple of tier 17 maps, but a lot of logbooks and a lot of Tujen refresh currency. Also a ton of their like currency for buying stuff. In terms of the actual like raw currency earned from this, I was maybe a little underwhelmed. I did have one map where I had strongest monster in the pack converts, you know, some item into chaos, and I slapped an all anarchy all flame ember on that, and that is how I got this big fat stack of chaos right here all in a row. But other than that, I would say generally speaking, the currency and the scarabs and the div cards and so on from this strategy, not super impressive. I did it in Dune, so I got a couple of fortunate cards, but I wasn't really like super duper thrilled with the just sort of raw bubblegum currency that I got from this. Also, it is pretty hard. I definitely should add that. It is quite hard, in fact. I found that this killed me on multiple occasions. It did what Uber bosses could not, and it killed my Forbidden Right Pathfinder. The most dangerous of, at least for this build, the most dangerous of the remnant modifiers that I ran into was the one that enemies kill things that are below 20% on hit. Because of this build being kind of structured around petrified blood, kind of operating in that 0 to 50% range very safely, losing 20% of that, losing basically 40% of my normal health pool, that actually wound up being very, very, very dangerous. And because there are so many remnants, it's really hard to avoid that. The only other thing, obviously, is it's a pure chaos damage build, so chaos damage immune remnants are, you know, can't do those. I had out of the 25 maps that I did, I had 2 that I bricked. One, I think I might have hit a chaos remnant or something because I couldn't kill anything. I didn't see chaos immune on the list, but I think I don't know. The other one, I had that 20%, and then the map had several dangerous modifiers on it, you know, vulnerability and I think elemental weakness or something like that, and then also like monsters deal percentage of physics extra elemental damage, and then also like impale on hit on the remnants, and then also like eldritch altar modifiers that make them do physics extra lightning and cold, and then also just even more monster modifiers, and I think also the killing at 20% or less. And so I got killed 6 times by that map. I died. You know, it's unfortunate. I definitely hated that I lost a map ultimately, or I guess 2 maps out of the deal, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to like, do I redo them or do I just like mention them? And I decided to go like, all right, let's just do 25 maps, and I'll just mention that I had 2 maps that I sort of bricked. I mean, I full cleared the map beforehand, so I still got that stuff out of it. I was able to pick up a little bit of stuff, but not the full thing. Another thing also is make sure that when you do one of the when you're doing an expedition, make sure that you drop your portal in case you die, not super close to the expedition. That was really what made that one that I got killed 6 times and bricked out of. That was what made it so bad, is ultimately I set a portal real close to the expedition, and died, and then zoned back in and died and died and died 3 times in a row, and eventually managed to get away and set a portal somewhere else. But I just didn't have enough left in me for how dangerous that expedition was. So just in terms of the sort of main thing that we're farming with this strategy, it mainly is about getting the exotic coinage and the burial medallions, and then all of the logbooks and the artifacts and so on, and then basically buying currency from Tujen, which I haven't done yet. I had burned through all of my exotic coinage and burial medallions beforehand. I got to take that life flask off, so I stopped hitting it randomly. A lot of artifacts. I had some artifacts left over. I think at this point in the league, you're going to have some artifacts left over. I think that's pretty normal, but I had burned out all the way down to 0 Greater Sun artifacts, and I don't know if I was at 0 Greater Black Scythe artifacts or not, but either way, I'm definitely not anymore. I have a massive amount of artifacts now, and like, I think I will ultimately wind up haggling all of these coins away, these hundreds and hundreds of coins. And I mean, basically my philosophy for buying stuff early in a league, I'll buy like lots of the little bubble gum currency and kind of make the most of each coin. But at this point in the league, I would basically only buy currency that is itself worth at least 1 chaos. So we're talking about chaos orbs, exalted orbs, divine orbs, maybe ancient orbs, depending on how they're priced. But then a lot of this stuff, like I wouldn't be necessarily buying fusings at this point in the league. I like to buy scourings and regret orbs, especially early on in the league. But, you know, at this point, I don't really have that many scourings. They've been out of my filter for a long time. Same with regrets, but I don't really have enough use for them to justify like the time spent haggling for them. So I think ultimately haggling wise, I'm basically just going to be buying like chaos and divines, and then that's mostly it. Checking for 2120 gems. That's, you know, checking for jewels that have great stats on them. That's about it. Now, in terms of what we do for this strategy, the scarabs that we're using we're using 2 of these, the Expedition Scarab of Rune Finding. This puts 100% increased number of runic monster markers each, and that's huge. I mean, as you can see from some of the footage, the monster explosions are absolutely insane. There are so many monsters, especially when sometimes you'll get the remnant modifier that duplicates all the runic monsters. So now instead of having 200% increased runic monsters, you're having basically 5 times as many monsters as normal. Instead of triple, you know, you're having about 5 quintuple. Pretty crazy. I mean, to the point that it literally causes some problems for the game. Like, the game is definitely not equipped to handle that many monsters spawning at once. Also very dangerous. You know, if you're playing a build, sort of like an even more dangerous version of some of the tier 17 ambush strategy. Like, if you're playing a build that is able to fit in Defiance of Destiny, that's good. It definitely works really, really well here. And then we're also using, of course, the Expedition Scarab of Archaeology so that we get 2 additional suffixes and prefixes onto each remnant, and that is really what makes this so insane. It does make it a lot harder to actually, like, get usable remnants, because you really do need to look around, especially for a lot of builds. It can actually be kind of hard. I'm playing a poison build. I don't believe that any remnants exist that grant immunity to poison, but there are ones that grant immunity to shock. There are obviously ones that grant immunity to each school of damage, which is tough. There are ones that grant immunity to curses, which is really, really bad for some occultist builds, or all occultist builds, really. You know, there's just a lot of really, really nasty remnant modifiers, so you need to have a character that does a lot of damage and is probably really tanky, or can just pop the explosive and then get off screen and try to off screen clear. That would be like the alternative, but one of those 2 things. You really do need a lot of damage. The ones that grant massive life regen, you can counter that slightly by using an upgraded Soul of Rizlatha. But I mean, there's so much damage from bleed and so much damage from poison because of remnants that you really want to have either like just straight complete ailment immunity, not just elemental, but also poison and bleed, or you want to have something like Soul of Shikari that's at least making the poisons not be quite as disgusting. I went with that since that synergizes with the rest of my build pretty well, and then I just out DPS my way through the reduced life regen rate. Another tip for this build specifically for Midnight Pathfinder, you know, right now I'm able to like lob all my projectiles out in one location, right? The Eldritch Altar mod that makes it so that your projectile distribution is random. They're fired in random directions. That is really bad for this, because the only way to really make that work is basically to dive directly into the middle of the expedition explosion, and that just puts you, I mean, you're surrounded by a billion mobs. That is definitely what caused a lot of my deaths. It massively reduces your damage output if you're playing any sort of projectile build that's not using Nimbus, basically. And yeah, really, really, really bad, like game-breaking Eldritch Altar downside. So definitely be wary of that as well. Now, notably, we're not using this. We're not using Expedition Scarab of the Scald. We're not using this because it's very expensive. It is listed as 2 chaos each, but it's not. It's really more like the 20 per divine, or maybe you could get them for 30 per divine. But like this up here, buying 80 of them at once for 1 divine, that's not real. I mean, okay, maybe it is real for 1 person, but then after that, the actual supply of them is not that high. The price on them will get pretty high. And additionally, getting Tujen out of the deal, getting Tujen is not bad. That is basically what you're going to use Danik on. Danik is more efficient than Tujen. You will get more Tujen rewards out of having Danik in every map. But we're kind of cramped here. We can't use archaeology and rune finding and verisium powder and the scald at the same time. Like, we only have 4 spots for scarabs, so we have to make the choice here. Do we use the incredibly cheap, incredibly easy to get verisium powder that increases the radius by another 80% and, you know, is cheap and easy and makes all of our big booms even bigger and boomier? Or do we guarantee that Danik's on every map and then have, I mean, basically in my case, have people mad at me that it's actually a lot more expensive than I said it was? So I went with, you know, no Danik, goodbye. And we'll take the verisium powder since that is super consistent. Now to look at the Atlas passive tree, and I'll have this linked in the description as always. We're taking the expedition guarantee nodes here, and the reason for that is because on the map device, our options really are to run expedition, which is all the way down here. It's like 6 chaos each. It's actually pretty expensive. It adds up pretty fast. Or to just run quant, and this is a mechanic that scales with quant, and you know, might as well just get a little bit more quant for free, since we can guarantee that expedition is on our maps pretty easily. I'll look here. So we have 84% chance to contain an expedition counter. That adds up with the base 8%, and then we're getting another over 8% from this. We're getting 10%. So we have 102% chance for an expedition to be in each map. And you know, you can only have 1 expedition, so over 100% is guaranteed every time. These blocker nodes that we're using to block Ritual and Delirium and Legion and Abyss and Breach Scarabs, maybe you don't need to block Breach, but, you know, all of the other ones, that gives you the 8% you need to get to 100% with the other nodes that we have here. So I'm taking Necropolis nodes, as always, taking those, and like I said, I did get some chaos from the Lantern of Aramor. I think I only farmed in this, I think I got 210 chaos. Let's take a look. 210 chaos, and it looks like about 110 of those came from 1 Lantern of Aramor map mod. I also did get this 1 valuable coffin here. It's worth a little under 3 divine, so that was pretty cool. I got a 2120 Vol Righteous Fire from a Gimling and a 2120 regular Reap, which isn't worth much. Same with this 2120 Vol Spectral Throw, not worth much. So anyways, back to the Atlas here. We're taking all the stuff that increases map mod effect, as always, and all of the quant wheel stuff on the outside. Now, rarity isn't really that valuable, really isn't that important in this. And spending 6 points to get through here to get this 3% more quant, it's an option. It's something you could do, but I ultimately chose not to. I came over here and I took Distinguished Demolitionist for more increased explosive radius, and then that also stacks with Verisium Powder and Extreme Archaeology, which we're of course taking. So we're not getting 200% increased explosive radius, we're getting 235 plus 80, 315. So we're getting an absolutely enormous boom. Having this at least 1 point here to give a little bit more range too is nice. If the middle area of the expedition is kind of cramped by like immune to chaos and you're playing a chaos build, or immune to fire and you're playing a fire build, being able to have a little bit more range away from the starting spot, a little bit more room to breathe there can help you still be able to actually do that expedition. I had one expedition that was very close to just not being doable because there were so many chaos immune remnants, but I was able to reach away from it. And maybe you could take, like, if you really don't mind getting breach scarabs, maybe you could take that breach point and put it here to get even more placement reach, just so you can make sure that you're never running into any situations where you get bricked out. Other than that, we're taking most of the normal scarab nodes, increasing our scarab drop chance. I took ambush and domination scarabs because ambush scarabs are very valuable right now, at least the expensive one. And domination scarabs are just always kind of nice to have on hand if you want to level another character. I did come up here and take Tujen and Danzig, of course, and then all the little nodes on the way to them. We're definitely taking blue Eldritch Altars. We're getting a lot of Eldritch Altar value. We are taking Quant and Rarity whenever possible in the Eldritch Altars because this all scales with Quant, and so it's really valuable. It also scales with pack size, and that's why we're taking all of the map mod nodes we possibly can. And that's kind of all there is to it. You do have to take 8% chance to contain an expedition encounter somewhere in here. There are a couple of passives for it. These two up here, this one here, and, you know, these down here. Quantity of artifacts dropped by monsters, not super valuable. And that's pretty much it. We're basically taking all of the expedition nodes and then, like, you know, all the notables, except for obviously, like, we don't want Gwynin and Tujen or Gwynin and Rog showing up, but all the rest of the notables. And then we're taking like one additional small passive just to guarantee that expedition's in our map. And that's pretty much the Atlas passive tree. Very normal. As I already said, we're using Quant on the map device because there really isn't anything else that would be better. Like getting rogue exiles or tormented stuff or shrines. I mean, you could do shrines if you like shrine. You could maybe move some points around in here and actually get more shrine buffs. That's an option. You can always do stuff to get packed with energy and get more chance at getting Nico in your map and then getting a bit of more extra damage and max all res. That wouldn't really do anything for the build I'm currently playing defensively, but for some builds that could be useful. But this is the setup I've been going with, and so it really just lends itself to going with Quant on the map device, which there's nothing wrong with that. Makes things a little cheaper. Here is our spreadsheet. Here is kind of the breakdown of things. I also have a Wealthy Exile tab pulled up here, and without having done any trading yet, which does take a little time, I wanted to just kind of evaluate this, you know, at least before doing any trading here with Tujen. 26 divines in the span of 25 maps. I did, like I say, sort of brick 2 of those maps. So if we were to say 23 maps, which isn't really very fair, but, you know, something around 14 to 15 divines per hour, that's pretty good. And it is a pretty cheap strategy. You know, you're only spending about 1 chaos on each of the scarabs. You're spending nothing on the map device. I am doing this with corrupted 8 mod maps on Dunes because Dunes is a perfect layout for expedition. And it does scale with Quant and pack size. So corrupted 8 mod maps are kind of the thing that makes sense. But that's the bulk of the cost. You know, we're spending 12 chaos per map. All this stuff is self-farmed as well. You know, some of the All Flame members, sure, maybe those had a little bit more value or more cost into it, but again, all self-farmed and not stuff I would ever actually sell to somebody else. So gonna count it as 0 anyways. And making 26 divines in that time frame, I would say maybe the one thing that's a little squirrely here is the time per map. For the most part, I would say the maps took about 3 to 4 minutes. Edging toward 4. I did have a couple that took a little longer from dying, more like 4 to 5. And then the final map, which I somehow managed to hang on, I had a bunch of lag spikes. I had bad map mods, bad remnant mods, and I had really awful Eldritch Altar mods, including random projectile distribution direction. And so, like, that map took an ungodly long amount of time, like 8 minutes or something. So that map maybe skewed things up to be like more more problematic. But I think generally speaking, 4 minutes per map was a pretty accurate estimate of how long I was taking per map. I think that was right around the right number. And I think that's pretty good. 14 divines per hour or so. Again, not including any of the Tujen trading, which is a little more difficult to quantify because, I mean, it's truly random. Like, I'm going to go ahead and go over here and just slap. And, like, did I get an Exalt? No, I didn't even get any Chaos. Do I really even want any of this? Not super duper. And the point of Tujen trading is that you kind of want to fly through this stuff pretty quickly. So, like, there we go, 5 Chaos. Yeah. You know, ultimately, I think that this is a pretty good strategy. I think the biggest criticism I have of it is that it's pretty dangerous. Like, you really do need either a ungodly tanky character, or you need to be able to deal a lot of damage and do that from like basically off screen. And I think that maybe makes it a little bit, it's kind of the opposite of what I would normally think of with Expedition, where I think of Expedition pretty much just Expedition without this archaeology scarab. Like, if you were to just do an Expedition setup that went the other direction, that did Danig and Verisium powder and rune finding, and just drop this incredibly dangerous archaeology scarab, it wouldn't be as rewarding. Probably be pretty close though, since you have Danig in there. It wouldn't be nowhere. It would be nowhere near as difficult. It is so much more difficult because of all of the extra suffixes and prefixes on all the remnants. But that does make it more rewarding, and also, you know, because it is so dangerous, it is pretty cheap. So if you're on a super juicy build and you want to kind of play around with something, I think this can be a pretty good strategy. I did find it to be kind of fun and quick. Initially, I have to say, after transitioning out of doing Harbingers and playing with this for a bit, my mindset was like, wow, this is, you know, I actually was not having fun for the first like map or two, but then after that, I have to say, I really kind of got right into the groove of doing Expedition. I really do like Expedition, especially with the big boom. It really is pretty fast and fun, and I really was like clearing through the maps quite a lot faster than I thought. It was definitely, like I said, a big change of pace from Harbingers, and a welcome one. I did really enjoy it a lot more, I think, once I really got things rolling, kind of adjusted for the incredible spike in difficulty after doing Harbingers for a while. But nice, simple, easy Harbingers, switch over to instant death Expedition. Bit of an adjustment, but pretty fun in the end. I actually did like this a lot. As for doing all of these Expedition logbooks, that is definitely something I could do. Something I really appreciate that Wealthy Exile does is, if we type in logbook here, it actually does evaluate them all based on what type of logbook they are. Black Scythe, Knights of the Sun, then the crappy Rog and Gwenin logbooks. Like, it does actually correctly break down their value, although I think the Black Scythe Mercenary logbooks are probably underpriced relative to their bulk sale price. I still think that that's pretty good that that tool does that, and I don't think I'm planning to run these, you know, logbooks for me. Done them plenty in the past. So ultimately, that's Expedition. I think Expedition is a really good early league mechanic, something that you can do on a shoestring budget and actually just get straight currency handed to you by Tujen. I think that's really awesome. I think in this strategy, it's definitely like fun, definitely good for React content, to just see like 100,000 dudes pop up around you doing infinite damage. Like, it's definitely an interesting change of pace from all of the other farm strategies. I think the biggest issue I have with it here is just the difficulty on it is very high, and I think profitability wise, it's pretty good. Like, if I sit here and trade with Tujen, maybe I can push that 14, 15 divine per hour rate up into something closer to 20. I think that's pretty good. But when I compare this to doing like Back to Basics or Ambush in tier 17 maps, I think the currency per hour is probably pretty comparable. And, you know, I think those other strategies are a little simpler, certainly easier, which is hilarious to think that tier 17 is easier than this, but I really do think it is. And yeah, I think maybe a little bit more fun because of the fact that this is so much more dangerous than a lot of other currency farming strategies. You would think it would be more profitable, and it's a little bit of a bummer to me that it isn't more profitable considering just how dangerous it is. With that being said, I still had fun doing it, and I like that unlike Back to Basics tier 17, really anything tier 17, you can get in and out of these maps in about 4 minutes a pop, and that's a pretty good thing. You know, also the investment is very low, so I think those are all advantages it has over tier 17, so I still think that there is a place for this, even if I think maybe tier 17s are a little bit more simple and straightforward. Alright, I think that pretty much covers it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. Bye.